Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Cradle, Book 12. Waybound, chapters 12 and 13. Guys, the last book. Every time that I open, I remember this is the last book, and I'm sad. In these chapters, Lyndon is fucked up. Properly good and proper. Fucked up. And his friends are trying so hard to, not even meet him halfway. Just, a third of the way. And it's not turning out the way everybody was hoping. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Andy for commissioning this episode. Andy is here in the chat. Thank you, Andy, for allowing me to move this episode around. This was supposed to be a whole week without any Cradle coverage, and I was then going to add it to yesterday, but I wound up having to stall the start of an episode yesterday, which would have made my day very late. I wouldn't even have been finishing until 10 p.m. So I decided to move it to a Friday. Unorthodox for me, but I appreciate Andy's flexibility in letting me do this so that I don't have to go for a whole week without reading anymore. These chapters are an exercise in anxiety. There's some success in them. So it's not purely losing. There's definitely steps forward, significant steps forward for a lot of our friends, but I feel like we got so much front-loaded triumph with the way that Lyndon was just managing to hold it down against these monarchs that I got a little bit complacent, I think. And so when we come to this part and things are really starting to roll in a different direction, I genuinely felt surprised. I genuinely was like, well, how dare you? So we start this off with Lyndon arriving at Windfall, and Reigan Shen is already there. It says that he is shredding a plague spirit with a whip made of life mantra. And I just really want to know what the fuck a plague spirit is. Does it just give you disease? Does it what does that do? And it would make sense that it's sort of like death, so if you use something with heavy life aura, then that would be a good weapon against it. But he just drops this so casually, and I'm sure that Will knows what he's talking about. I'm sure he has thought through exactly what a plague spirit is. But I don't know, and I want to know, and I'm hoping that someday, when this series continues to grow in popularity until it's its own whole very obnoxious fandom on the internet, I'm hoping that Will drop a compendium that goes along with the main series that's filled with all kinds of niche information about different continents, different paths, different techniques, and that we get to explore some of the goofy aspects that he didn't find a way to include in the proper book, but he wanted to have for his own information. Because I live for that stuff. There are times where I truly feel like enough is enough already. We don't need all of this. But that tends to really be when it's well, you need to know this stuff for anything else to make sense. And that's not really what we're working with here. It's pure whipped cream. It's just extra. So I would be very, very into it. But anyway, so poor Lyndon doesn't really get how Reigan Shen has found them. And, Windfall does have its own defenses, but the whole, the main defense was you can't find it. So when somebody does find it, then that's 90% of the battle won. And Yerin has come out to defend against Reigan Shen. And this is so like the portal thing that Reigan Shen is doing. He always does it, but there's something different about it in this scene because of the fact that like it hasn't been a continual battle of him. He just opens up a portal in the midst of Linden getting here and like sucks up one of his techniques. And because they hadn't been fighting as up close and personal earlier, the portal thing felt like it was much more, oh, let me open up my drawers here and get some supplies out. Here, the portals themselves feel a lot more like weapons than they did. And so, yeah, one of them opens on Tiberian Aurelius, and he is shooting fucking lightning, and he is not able to pull his punches, which really blows. And it throws Yerin. She's like just managed to get to the portal, and it follows her through. And she gets to the other side, but the portal is destroyed, which means that our friends are all trapped in the pocket world unless they can like either find a way out or Linden can get in and let them out. And he is really upset at the fact that they're trapped in there. But then when eventually Mercy and Ziel get out, he's sort of like horrified at the fact that they're showing up. And I was kind of like, Linden, can't you look on the bright side and at least be like, hey, look, they made it out. But yeah, this whole scene, I was just not expecting for Linden to arrive and find that Shen had already engaged with Windfall. I thought he was going to attempt to like add another veil. I thought he would intercept and try and defend Windfall. And maybe Shen would manage to break through and actually find it, maybe not. But I didn't think that Shen was going to have basically torn almost everything around it down by the time that Linden got there. So Linden is in really bad shape. The fight has taken so much out of him, and he doesn't really have enough will left in him to use like workings of authority effectively. If he were just using them in a vacuum here, maybe it would still work. But because he is trying to fight against Reigan Shen's authority, it's not enough. So there is a moment here where he is trying to close a portal that Shen is using to escape. And he can't close it. Shen just dismisses it and is standing like half in, half out of the portal. And he says to Linden, if you see Osmanthus on the other side, tell him I didn't kill you. Now, I don't know if I completely get this, guys. If y'all have info that you want to share, I don't understand why Shen didn't engage further here. I thought that he was going to come to Windfall and like try and get at Linden's people, or that he would be aware Linden was like in such bad shape and would finish breaking him basically. And I get not wanting to make Osmanthus angry and so deciding to not kill him in the end. But at least taking him hostage feels like a thing to do. It seems like something that he could manage when Linden is in this state. And like, honestly, all things considered, even if you don't kill Linden, you've got Osmanthus's ancestor enslaved in a portal and you're using him as a weapon. Well, his remnant. I feel like the ship on that has sailed, my friend. And I know that Shen doesn't see it that way. Honestly, I think the fact that he doesn't is very short-sighted. But I guess he's just like, well, he has much more of a soft spot for Linden than he does for Tiberian. Maybe that's true. Or maybe Osmanthus just has other shit to do. But we know that Shen doesn't fully understand the depth to which this shit that happened on Cradle was not about him. He really thinks that Osmanthus is like nursing this grudge and going to come back and exact his revenge and watching them all at all times, basically. So you would think that, like, even just having Tiberian would be considered a hazard by him. I'm bored says, Shen doesn't go further because the weeping dragon is right there and it isn't on anyone's side besides its own. That makes sense. Because I actually, when I read it the first time, I was like, oh, the weeping dragon it starts raining. And I was like, oh, maybe that's why. But because I didn't realize that the weeping dragon was here and Linden doesn't process it until right after Shen leaves, I think that I didn't put the two things together. But that makes sense. So then we go to Yerin's POV, and she is so furious. She immediately, of course, tries to get back through that portal, which gets destroyed. And she can't tell what's going on out there anymore. They had constructs that had been she had been able to feel through them. But now they're cut off. Everything is broken. And Linden, she knows that he is like just barely hanging on. And he's out there with Reigan Shen and the Weeping Dragon all by himself. And she is trying desperately to like calm herself because she is ready to lose it a little bit. And here it is. Her fear became panic and advanced beyond that, stretching into a rejection of reality. She had not worked so long and fought so hard to die here. The world seemed to hum around her, like it had when she was trying to sense the sword icon. She heard a distant music, faint and ethereal, but it echoed through her bones. She realized distantly that she had summoned the Phoenix song, which allowed her to hear the sounds more clearly. It combined what she remembered of the sword icon, the razor-edged silence of Athen's deadly technique, and the sounds of bloodlust from the Phoenix song. She knew what that song meant. It was leading her to the ones she was about to kill. Yerin didn't know who she blamed for this situation. Whoever or whatever it was, she was going to cut them. I love this so much, but I'm also kind of worried about it. Because Yerin's temper in this section, it's like, I don't want to say it's out of control because I don't think it's quite there yet. But she's letting it have a little bit more room than she usually does. Usually, Yerin locks things down pretty tight, and she'll say things verbally that are alluding to how she's feeling, but her actions tend to be just very matter of fact. You see some real anger in her in this section in a way that I don't feel we've seen before. And I can't tell if it's because of this like connection that she's got to the Bleeding Phoenix, but also like this cycling technique that she has learned from Red Faith, where she has to really connect with the desire to kill people, or if it's just the circumstances of everything being so bleak and everything is like feeling much more an emergency than it ever has. ¿Por qué no los dos? I mean, it could be all of the above, but she is really like on the edge in these two chapters in a way that makes me think either she's about to have like a breakthrough or a breakdown. We're gonna have to wait and see. Her sword was in her hand, and there was a ragged network of cracks in the pocket world where the portal had collapsed. To her, it was like a keyhole, and she stabbed her sword inside like a key. She focused her will like she never had before. The sword sank until it pierced something deeper than reality. And she's about to just jump in that shit. And Ziel shows up and is like, yo, hey, that's the way, and you don't know what you're doing, and you're just going to throw yourself in there, and you don't know where the fuck you're even going to come out. You could just turn out in a totally different fucking universe. And she's like, that won't happen. And he says, okay, that's great that you just say that. You don't have any training. And she's like, yeah, well, sometimes you just got to learn to run before you walk. And I know it's definitely not taking me here. And since here is exactly where the fuck I don't want to be, that sounds perfect to me right now. And she jumps in that shit and just vanishes and leaves Ziel and Mercy behind. And we get like the effects of her in the way and how like almost overwhelmed she is here for a moment. She felt it approaching. Her song grew louder, almost deafening, and she willed herself out into the stream that twisted closer to what was real. She didn't stop. The current didn't release her. She did scream this time, though she couldn't be sure it made any sound. Yerin struggled against the force of the way, trying to claw her way back, but she may as well not have bothered. Almost immediately, she felt something else. She couldn't afford to miss this one. This time she activated her moonlight bridge and urged it in that direction. She thought it would be hard to activate, but it was like trying to strike a spark where the air was full of fire aura. Instead of simple white light, she exploded into a pale moon. When she reappeared, she was standing on a ruined building and looking out onto a war. And this scene, she comes out and that we've got a bunch of Aurelius people fighting against, I think Reigan Shen's folks, if I'm not mistaken here. Let's see. Yellow-haired sacred artists wearing dark blue did battle with their opposites. So does that mean blue-haired sacred artists wearing dark yellow? That doesn't sound right. The opposing force carried banners of gold and had legions of cloud ships that outnumbered their enemies. What does fighting their opposites mean in this context? I don't think I really stopped to consider what that sentence meant. I just accepted that their opposites simply meant their enemies. But that's a weird way to say that. Now I'm sort of stuck. Did I miss something about the description of these guys? So she taps the Moonlight Bridge again, because this is not Linden or Reigan Shen. And she says for it to bring her to Linden, and it doesn't do anything because that bitch is tapped out. She just used it in the midst of the way. That took a lot. And at this point, she finally zeroes in on the banners and realizes that House Shen is like the banners that are all around her. So while it's not exactly what she was hoping for, she could still have some effect. She could still maybe at least screw his day up, So she's like, all right, I'm going to do my best. And we have a woman who shows up, Yushi the Thunder Fairy. And I'm pretty excited to be meeting her. I wish that we got a little bit more of her personality in the midst of this. We don't get too much because she is somebody that we've heard tell of a few times. And we have seen her from afar, I think, but I don't know that we ever really got to talk to her at all. And she sounds really wild. She had long brown hair and was as delicate as her nickname suggested. If Yerin couldn't feel her strength as a herald, she would have said Yushi looked too delicate to hold a weapon. The wings didn't seem to be her gold sign, as a spark burned on the center of Yushi's forehead. And I am really curious about that then. How do the wings work? Is that something that's made of mana? Or are they an object, a sacred treasure of some kind? I'm just real curious about that as well. So she heads towards Yushi, and there is, of course, a script formation that's blocking her. And we have a few attempts here from Yerin, and she keeps getting blocked, and she is not even interested in a conversation at all. She's just going for the jugular immediately. This bit here, there was an archlord aiming a launcher at her. She uses her sword aura against it. Blades of aura erupted from within him, tearing him apart from the inside out. Her phoenix song technique drew something from the dead man, but his weapon still fired. Guys, I don't like this. I don't like it. I understand what we're doing, but I just wanted to register for the record. I don't love it. This whole vibe. She's like breaking from the inside out. I mean, holy shit, that is so brutal. And then that she's like taking something from him at the same time. I understand that this is no different technically than when Lyndon was going and hunting people down and draining their memories and their power and whatnot. Like, it's the same thing, but because she is coming at this with such rage and there isn't like, it doesn't feel like rational. And I am really concerned about whether or not this is something that's like gonna bite her in the ass later. And I don't even know if that's likely. I don't know if I'm putting something on her that I shouldn't, you know? But this whole thing is just extremely scary. So Yerin goes to like hit Yushi again. And all of a sudden this man comes out and says, disappear. And this is the Sage of Calling Storms. This guy sounds like what if Red Faith, but with too much passion instead of none. It's like if they met and were able to each sort of exchange a little bit of their personalities, they might have balanced each other out a little bit more. But this dude is so manic feeling. And at one point later, when he's with Ziel, he says something as if to suggest that, like, his torture of Ziel has helped Ziel become a better sacred artist. Like, he's trying to take credit or something. I don't know what it is that he's thinking, but it is so... like, he is doing the same thing as Red Faith, where he's seeing people as like experiments, and there isn't any humanity in him. This is all like a fucking thought experiment. You know, he's the kind of guy that would just get on a comment section and be like, devil's advocate, what about men's rights? We don't get custody of our kids. Like, it's not real for you. So of course you don't care. Not really. You just want to see what happens because you're a fucking child. There's just something about him that feels really like childlike, but in the way that children are little sociopaths who don't understand consequences yet. And I just truly, he makes me so uncomfortable. So he says, have you come on behalf of your master? And again, I keep forgetting that people like see Ethan as their master, which he was their mentor, but I just never saw him as their master the way that this universe tends to mean master. So whenever people say that, I'm like, who? Oh, right, Ethan. Right. I just keep having to like recontextualize that. And Yerin is asking them to send her to Lyndon. But he's like, of course I can't do that. I want to see what the fuck you've got. And she basically goes, all right, I'll kill you if you want. Sure, let's do it. And this is when we jump back to Ziel and Mercy. This is a pretty, like, I really felt for them because there's this stuff happening out there that they are locked in here and just sort of beating at the glass. Like, there's just a feeling of such impotence for a little while in here. And they're trying to figure out how they're going to get the hell out of here. And she asks how close the weeping dragon is. And Ziel just says close. So she says, Oh, no, he says, I left a protective script around Yerin. It might be broken already, but I should be able to feel what's left of it. If we can open the way again, I can follow it to Yerin. Still not sure she ended up where Linden is. And she says, all right, so if I can open the portal, you can take us through the way? And he's like, I can take us in, and I think I can keep us from, like, disintegrating. I am not convinced I can get us exactly where we want to go. I'm not even sure if we are both going to wind up together wherever we land. But she's like, yeah, no, I'm going to do it. And she says, my mother left some of her authority in my book. I'm going to advance, and then I'm going to borrow her power to transport us. And Ziel is like thinking to himself how offhand she is with her tone, and that she makes this like absurd suggestion sound like it's a completely doable thing. And I'm thinking, oh shit, Mercy's getting serious. But when we're inside her head, and I think this is to her credit, she's thinking back on this moment and how blithely she acted like she was going to pull this off, and is sort of feeling a little bit of like chagrin. And I liked finding out that in a way, at that moment, she was like channeling Yerin and Linden, and even thinks like, who do I think I am? Linden, when she says that. And I sort of like, I just felt like this was a real thing that would happen if you hang out with folks who are as consistently fucking successful and exceptional as Linden and Yerin both are. And you have also been consistent and exceptional in your life, but you feel like you've fallen behind. You would start to sort of ape their confidence and their assurance that a thing is doable in order to maybe even just hype yourself up. And the difference is like, are you going to put your money where your mouth is and like put the work in? You know what this makes me think of is, I'm so sorry, Mercy. Like, I am not comparing you to these guys at all. I am comparing this overall like attitude of, if we just say it with enough confidence, we'll will it into being. Because Mercy does back it up. She puts her work in. But this made me think of the guys who planned the Fire Festival. Y'all remember that shit from like several years ago at this point? That was the exact type of thing where these dudes acted like they could just manifest an amazing event as long as they like decided it was going to happen and told people do it. It would just have to happen. Like it was just the wildest thing. If you haven't watched like the documentaries about it, especially after what happened recently with the Titan, that submersible that was supposed to go and explore the wreckage of the Titanic, it's just a whole other exercise in people who have too much money and such an inflated sense of their own abilities, who really just think that societal conventions and engineering and all of the safety protocols and stuff, they're only suggestions, and they really don't apply if you have vision. And of course, they fucking crashed and burned, and that this was like sort of in a way how they moved forward, because they thought they could just like I said, will it to happen. And the difference here, of course, is, like I said, that these are people who are like listening to advice and putting in the work. And while they're pushing the envelope, they're also accepting limitations, and they are, you know, hearing what their elders are saying and what experts are saying. So there's a difference between being an innovator and just straight up doing shit that everybody agrees won't work and hoping for a different outcome than what every professional and engineer tells you will happen. Anyway, so Ziel, she says this to him, and he's just sort of like, that sounds insane, but okay, let's try it. And he is looking at her as she begins to like go into her book mentally. And he talks to Orthos and Little Blue. And we have this scene here. Orthos is in the midst of dealing with another dragon spirit. He's having a little bit of a hard time. Meanwhile, Little Blue is doing a hollow domain. I love this so much, y'all. Only a breath or two after Ziel arrived, Little Blue's eyes snapped open and met his. Ziel recoiled. Her gaze was uncharacteristically intense. It was so much like Linden's that it was unnerving, as though Linden and his contracted spirit had switched bodies. Then Blue waved cheerily and let her bubble drop. Y'all, I am absolutely ecstatic to see that Little Blue is out here turning into a terrifying force of nature. I never saw this coming for her at the start of our tale. Just didn't believe, I didn't even realize, I think, that she could advance. I didn't comprehend how this would even work. So I am just extremely excited about seeing what she does, because she looks like she's becoming a real force to be reckoned with. So Ziel tells her Linden's in danger. The portal is destroyed. Can you tell us anything? And she basically checks in with Linden and says, he doesn't seem afraid, so I'm not afraid. And he watches her go, and he's like, man, she's so certain of this. I wonder if, I had a sort of spirit companion or sacred beast when I was going through the worst parts of my life. Maybe it would have helped to, have their support. And then again, Linden had far too many tiny companions. Ziel tried to picture himself with a half-dozen pets and shuddered. He couldn't imagine it. The heavens had only made him responsible for one life, and that was already a heavy burden to bear. Which is hilarious based on the fact that later on he is like, yeah, I'm a shield. And I'm like, so your one life kind of becomes disposable in favor of saving a bunch of other lives. Interesting. So we go to Little Blue here, and her and Orthos are having a conversation. He's in the midst of finally eating this remnant. Every new mouthful of Madra added to the struggle inside of him. That was the real battle, not out here. Orthos was wrestling against the mind and spirit of another while trying not to lose himself. It was a furious fight, and Little Blue wished him constant encouragement while she waited for him to win. I love that phrasing. It's not hoping against hope or whatever. Waited for him to win. She's just the faith, the total faith there. It's beautiful. It's heartwarming. So she runs up, puts her hand on him. He didn't like it when she cleansed him so suddenly, but they didn't have time to waste. And her and Orthos are talking about how Linden is on the verge of death. You just told Ziel, well, he's not worried, so I'm not worried. She just lied? She just lied to Ziel because she was like, he doesn't want them to know how much he's struggling. So I'm just going to keep that shit to myself, and the only people who really have to know about it are me and Orthos. I mean, I didn't know that she was even able to lie. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but I kind of thought of her as one of the Fae, where that's built into the way that she functions, is that she has to tell the truth. And if she can't say anything nice, then she just says nothing at all. I was not ready for her basically trying to shield Ziel, shield the shield from what's really going on, because she is worried about what he'll do. Orthos tells her that she should go because she'll be able to help more than he would. She might be able to help the others, but she wasn't strong enough to help Linden yet. She needed more for that, and without her here, Orthos would never make it in time. He sensed that thought and he didn't like it. It pricked his pride, though he didn't acknowledge that, so she didn't mention it either. And I do like this moment as well. Just the fact that they're able to like feel the general vibe of what the other is thinking, and they will let it pass, you know. It's just kind of fascinating, the connection that they have. So there is this device for Madra purification. The last step to prepare to advance to Herald. After that, it would be down to Linden to push her the rest of the way. She let the quicksilver fire bathe her, which was only a sort of warm, shivery feeling at this point. Nothing like the dramatic transformation she'd felt the first time, but she wanted to be as stable as possible when she went in. And Orthos is like, maybe you should hold on for a second. I can cycle this power and be in a more stable place, and then I'll be prepared to help you. And at first, she's sort of like, you couldn't help me. I have to do this by myself. And he says, well, you don't want to do this alone, do you? And she almost hesitates. And then she's like, no, but that's what this is all about. Seeing if I can do it alone. Like, that's the willpower thing. A voice echoed from somewhere else. Alone? It sounds like you could use the assistance of a powerful dragon. And here comes fucking Noraloth. I just really enjoy this weirdo dragon. So she walks into the column. Instantly, she was buried in the conflicting wills of 6 remnants, all more powerful than her. They were weakened by the scripts and devices, otherwise their wills would crush her directly. But together their attention was heavy. Noraloth lightened the weight more, but not too much. The pressure was the point. The bound remnants screamed at her, and Blue screamed back. Not in fear. She matched them for intensity. They should hurry up and give her their power. She had somewhere to be. And I'm just picturing this tiny little creature with her fists at her sides, just like screaming, like, you know, head forward, just like that sort of warrior cry. I'm into it. I don't know if you guys have seen the most recent Thor movie that came out, Love and Thunder, but there's a whole scene where a bunch of kids like fight a brief battle, and there is more than one shot of a couple of little kids doing a sort of war cry, and they really go for it. Like, it's cute, question mark, but it really does feel like, no, these kids would draw blood. These kids would be about it, you know, as you're watching it. And that's sort of the vibe I'm imagining here. This is what I'm picturing. So then we go to Mercy. And I'm not going to go through absolutely everything that happens in this book scene, but she is seeing different versions of her life. And what I was sort of curious about is how much of this is like based on actual potential futures and realities, and how much of it is based on what Malice thought was the future for Mercy at the time, and whether any of it has actually changed, or can it continue to change and update within the book. How much of this was influenced by what Malice wanted for Mercy versus who she actually has turned out to be. All like what this comes down to is her trying to like get a sense of what her revelation could potentially be. And what she's feeling from a particular memory is this like intense faith in her own family. And this kind of causes a little bit of a spiral for Mercy for a moment, because she just isn't feeling that way anymore. This is what her mother wanted her to feel about the Akura clan. And she has had her eyes opened, and she isn't going to get back here anymore. Like, it's too late, you know? Let's see. Mercy felt herself grow through the battle, and she tried to get a sense of her Archlord revelation. The mind she had in this dream rejected the idea. Forcing advancement, it was a foolish road. Time and experience would give her the self-insight she needed. And Mercy kind of like pulls out of this, and she's sitting there really frustrated because even in this like this dream universe, there was intense disapproval being thrown in her direction. And she's sitting there like, yeah, I know. It would be great if I could fucking take my time and do this incrementally. That's not the situation. And she's sitting there thinking about her Overlord revelation. I am not malice. I am mercy. And she's sort of like, I don't know if I want to say panicking, but I feel like that's as good a word as any. And this is when Ziel says that your Archlord revelation is the oath to which you dedicate your future. Anything works as long as you're dedicated to it honestly and fully. That honesty is the hard part. And so she starts thinking over what mission she would sort of like to make her life's ambition. And everything she initially thinks of kind of has to do more with other people than her. Dedicating her life to her friends or not doing things the way her mother does. And she's just like, no, it has to be about me. And she is thinking about the way that her mother had attempted to, let's see, I'm trying to find the spot here. Oh yeah, here it is. She wanted to make the world, what did she really want? What had she always wanted? She wanted to make the world a better place. At some point, her mother had wanted the same thing. She had seen the darkness of the wilderness, and she had wanted to light it up. She used the power of darkness to push back the darkness, and she had seen mercy as a light. And I've got to be honest, guys, I was a little bit disappointed that her Archlord revelation is still kind of about malice. And I'm not saying it's really about malice, but it's revolving around what Malice's thought was of mercy. And I don't know, it just felt like it's not that it doesn't resonate with Mercy, because it does seem to, but I don't know why we have to contextualize it in what Malice had wanted for Mercy to do. Unless that's kind of required for it to work with the book. I don't know. But I was just hoping that she would come to a sort of idea on her own. And it felt like it was still sort of filtered through Malice's expectations here, you know? So we jump into chapter 13 and we get this pretty, I should have seen this coming kind of moment. So Lyndon is still at Windfall, and he is like desperately fighting, trying to figure out what he can do as the Weeping Dragon approaches, and he is like tapped out. And he's just hoping to God that the Dread God actually follows him, and that it doesn't, he's doing what he can, man. And Dross is trying to be encouraging. There's a good chance they can travel through space for short distances, just not too far or too often. When he arrived in Sacred Valley, thanks to the Labyrinth's transportation, he swept his spiritual perception over the territory. Most of the people were still sheltering underground. It hadn't been long since the battle with the Monarchs, but a few had ventured topside. Warn them, Lyndon said to Dross. And guys, it didn't occur to me how everybody must have had to hide underground during a Monarch battle. It should have, because like, yeah. Yeah. I just kind of thought, I think that the protections of the Labyrinth around Sacred Valley would be enough to keep them from feeling the like unmitigated effects. think that I just saw it as a sort of ward, you know? And I think it does function that way partially, for sure. But evidently, it's either straight up not enough, or if you are like a low enough level of advancement, it's going to be a lot more hard on you. And considering how low level everybody who had come from Sacred Valley was, that might just be too much for them. Oh, I'm so sorry, guys. There's so many comments, and I'm like trying to make sure I don't run out of time here, so I haven't been reading them. I'm just seeing MX Shard says Little Blue pulled out a knife flashbacks. I forgot about that blooper. Asher says, I think it's only fair that this is the case. Her whole life to this point has been about tracing the path her mother wanted. Of course, when she's evaluating what she wants, she has to think about how she's going to diverge. I mean, she is thinking about how she's going to diverge, but it still comes down to she had seen Mercy as a light. So it's like, how she's going to diverge from her mother, yeah, but she's still doing what her mother wanted. You know? I don't know. And maybe just like rebelling against what your mom wants for the sake of it is not a good thing either. But I would have liked to have that mentioned, I guess. But anyway, okay, so back to Linden. The Weeping Dragon has followed him most of the way back. This is just really bad news. And as he's standing there like, what the fuck am I going to do? Mercy and Ziel just fall out of space right next to him. And he is like, fuck, they can't be here. This is way too bad. Mercy called her armor to protect her from the rain, but she raised her arms triumphantly as they appeared. You did it, she cried to Ziel. And Linden is just like, oh, fuck, I need to be able to keep my face under control, but they cannot be here. And he can feel that they have both made massive strides forward, but it is simply not enough. And this really made me go, I have been assuming this whole time that our friends would make it to Monarch, that it would happen for all of them. And what if the point of this last book is that they fight back even though they aren't advanced enough? Maybe that's what it is. I've been sort of waiting for the comfortable moment where we're ready to go now and things shall proceed. And maybe we're just never going to get that feeling of reassurance. And they just have to fucking flail forward as best they can with the amount of advancement they've got. In other words, as Yerin had put it, learning how to swim by just falling out of a boat. So, let's see. He asks them for forgiveness. And Mercy is saying, get up, come on, we've got to move. Ziel's horns shone emerald, and he looked up into the sky with resolve. An enforcer technique nailed him to the ground as he lifted his hammer. Let's get him out of here. No need, I'm not done yet. You should leave. Go back to Yerin. And he thinks that Yerin's either still in the pocket world or with them. And when he realizes she's not, of course it's alarming, but he just doesn't have time to really like worry about it. He has to use the move command, and he sends them to Yerin. And when we go over to them later, they are just really like frustrated and upset at the fact that he sent them away. But this is what needed to happen. So this is when Linden is like, all right, so we're going to unleash the echoes. And he uses the last, I want to say, of his energy, releasing some, it says 100 echo bindings activated at once. This was the birthplace of the Dread Gods. Ghostly gray-white feet, large enough to crush cities, appeared to Linden's left and right. A skeleton appeared from the feet up to the head, then a broad shell, skin like dark stone, and a lashing tail that could slice through mountains. It's the Wandering Titan's echo. I should have realized he could do this. It didn't even enter my mind. Not even a trace of it. And the Weeping Dragon sees the Wandering Titan and thinks, I don't know if it's like, he says, "What have you done to my brother?" And I'm assuming he thinks that this is the real Titan. And the Titan punches the dragon in the face. Quaking ground shook Linden, and though it was not enough to harm him, it wasn't comfortable. "That's all you have left," Strauss said anxiously. "You're out. Don't go trying to spend more than you have, okay?" And Linden just passes out. So here we go to Ziel and Mercy. And this is a really tough scene because what's happening here is Ziel is coming face to face with the fucking dude who tortured him into spiritual paralysis is like the way I want to phrase this. And the way that it fucks with his head to be face to face with this guy again. And he unleashes on this dude over and over, and really at one point is fucking like looking for his remnant, very certain there's no way he survived that, and the fucking guy is coming back. I'm gonna pause for a sip of soda. How many people have read Will's latest book? Well, latest series, the book The Captain. Because there is a character named Omega in that book. And I am really getting Calling Swords energy from Omega. Obviously, I read that book before this one. And once we got here, I was like, oh shit. I wonder which came first. You know, we've seen the Sage of Calling Storms before briefly, and we have heard of him, but we never really got a sense of him, I don't feel like. And they are extremely similar, both in their sort of like manic attitudes and also the fact that they are almost indestructible. And I don't appreciate how much they fucking lay on this guy, and he is still able to get back up and put himself back together like he's some fucking claymation. It's just, it's like Who Framed Roger Rabbit? He gets steamrolled over and he just stands up and he's just flat and begins to like pop his features out and get back at like, it just seems extremely unfair. I don't like it. And I also don't like the way that Ziel is just kind of being ruled by the emotional reaction he's having. Since that's being combined with Yerin also kind of going ham, I just feel like the only person who is really keeping their head in this situation totally is Mercy. And it's not like Ziel has completely given in, you know, he isn't completely out of control, but it just feels like a nerve has been touched here. He's been triggered, you know? And I don't like seeing this when we are up against the wall the way we are. So yeah, this just like watching Ziel go to town on this dude and really feel like finally I killed him and it's done. And then watching him get up. I mean, and this fucking dude, that's it. That's what I wanted. Show me your answer. You have looked into the abyss. What did you see? Oh my God. Get a life. Stop it. Enough. I could feel it, Brother Ziel. The honesty of your anger would move the very heavens themselves. You're close to the truth. You just need a little more motivation. What are you trying to do? The way that he's talking here is almost like he's attempting to get Ziel to connect to the shield icon. But I don't believe that's what he was doing in the first place with mangling Ziel's Madra, was he? His cores. I mean, who the fuck knows if this guy had any rhyme or reason to like the way and order in which he did things. So this fight, we go back and forth with him just shouting about how, you know, their master is the master of death and blah, blah, blah. And then finally, there is a moment where Ziel is looking at the way Yerin is throwing herself in front of him, both literally and figuratively. And he's like, wait a second. I'm the one that's supposed to do that. And I love this. The Storm Sage had crushed his future, making a mockery of his life's purpose. Was Ziel going to let him do it again? Maybe Ziel had only failed once. He had a chance to do it again. A guardian, a protector, a shield. And I think we all saw this coming, right? That he was going to like manifest a shield icon, like, come on. And he begins to do this and he commands endure. And a storm dragon just passes over Mercy and doesn't do anything. And this is when the Storm Sage is like, ha ha! And says, look what I have created. Just, I mean, that is so gross. Oh, I hate it so much. And I love this. Hold on, Ziel ordered, and reality changed so that she could. Ziel stayed focused on Yerin. Protect. His third working, not backed by any technique. His core was entirely empty, but the protection of his authority should give Yerin the edge. He wouldn't get his revenge, but at the moment that didn't seem so bad. Was it really revenge he'd wanted? Now he wasn't sure. All along, he had only wanted a chance to do it over. I loved this. I loved this. It's not about, I want to get back at you, after all, even though that's 100% what you thought. No, it's, I want to fix my mistake. I want to try again. And I love the revelation that that is what he wanted, but it seemed like something that was impossible to get, which of course would make you sort of give up for a while. Because if in your heart of hearts, you're just like, I wish I could go back and undo what the fuck happened. It's kind of amazing, really, that Ziel is the one with like the power to control time. When, if you look at it this way, that's like at the heart of what he wishes he could do, is go back and undo some things. And it's like Ethan saw in him that despite the appearance of having given up, he hadn't really. That deep depression and apathy came from a place of desperately wanting it to be different still. Not having accepted that nothing will ever change, but being crushed by the fact that you like will never be able to think about anything else. And that just really got to me. And there's a moment here where they have finally reached an understanding, and it seems as if, okay, we're going to get sent to Linden. We've made this deal with these guys, and they're going to send us away in exchange for us not hurting him anymore. And the Thunder Fairy is 100% down for this. But then fucking this calling storms is like, where is it? I will cast the children of death toward their older brother, but on my own I can never reach so far. Heralds, join your will to mine. I require the authority of another icon. How about some help, my friend? Ziel's hammer was already crashing down on calling storms before the first conscious thought made it through his mind. But he stopped his own weapon an inch from the sage's face. There was a discordant note from the shield icon. His own newborn connection to it flickered and weakened. He was being offered a way to protect his current sect. As a guardian, he should take it. And he is like trying to reconcile the desire to actually protect with this opportunity that is in front of his face. And he says, I'll send the other two back, but my Dawnwing student stays with us. I have more teaching to do. Which I have to assume means torturing. That's what I'm assuming. So Ziel is like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to let them go. I will be protecting them. That will be fulfilling what I am meant to do. And then I will fuck this guy up. And he says that he will stay. Yerin is punching the man in the face as he says this. And Ziel is just like, wait, what the fuck? Like, she's normally so collected. What is happening? And she looks so enraged. And the Thunder Fairy is like, you need him to go where you want to go. Why are you shooting yourself in the foot? Don't do this right now. And Yerin is like, he should have shut the fuck up. He couldn't help himself, so here we are. And he really wants to see what Ethan would do, huh? Oh, really? Is that what you want? Is that what you want to see? You want to see what... I'll show you what the fuck he would do. And she draws her weapon, and he wanted to stop her. Her outrage on his behalf was going to cost them their chance at getting back to Linden. But for just a moment, he was frozen in fear, and that cost him his chance. Yerin unleashed the Reaper's sword, and the battle began once more. And I cannot wait to see what that did. Did it kill him? I really hope it did. Because this is as purely, I need you to die, as I think we've seen Yerin feel in a while. So, you guys, I can't believe I had to stop here, but also it did take me like a full hour to talk about this. So, I guess. Let's see. That's interesting. MX Shard says, my reading is that the guy calling storms is trying to glean the way by guiding people to icons in horrifically immoral ways. Connor says, sort of like Red Faith, but instead of focusing on blood shadows and monarch advancement, he's focused on sage advancement, the way, and icons. That's a really interesting... Okay, I see what you guys are saying. Oh my god, Connor's cat just typed 69. I wondered what the fuck that was, Connor. I saw the 69 at the corner of my eye, and, you know, normally, you guys, I am queen of 69 jokes, dick jokes, whatever, but I was not getting the relevance, and I was just like, I'm going to address that 69 later, because I don't know what the hell that is, but I need to know, so I'm going to wait until I'm done and then go back. Apparently, you've got a very perverse cat, Connor. Emic Shard says, if I recall, there's in one of the books a mention about learning about the way when a sage manifests an icon. I might be misremembering it, though. I think that it's like, you know, connecting to the ultimate idea of a thing. And I feel like we talked about that. Yeah, Connor says, Ethan knew that Linden was close to Sage, maybe also Malice, Northstrider, and maybe even Charity. Linden looked into Ziel's eyes in Dreadgod and saw that Ziel was close. Ethan also saw it in Yerin's eyes in Uncrowned. Oh, I forgot that he looks at her and says, I don't see it in you yet. Asher says, I think Calling Storms is one of, if not the least likable characters in this book. Yeah, it's really interesting because Reigan Shen is sort of amusing in his infuriating way. And Red Faith, there was a certain logic to what he did that I understood and could even empathize with in a way. But calling storms, it's like a combination of like this delight in cruelty and also deep self-centeredness that is a really vile combination. And even his ally can't fucking stand him. She's rolling her eyes at him, you know? Yeah, no, I hate this guy. And it makes me so, like, sickened to think about Ziel in his clutches and what he was doing to Ziel, probably yammering the whole time he did it. And he had to just sit there and listen to it. Ugh, kill me. So next episode will be on 3 chapters, 14, 15, and 16, for those who are reading along. And that will be on Tuesday of next week. So I hope that y'all are enjoying the coverage. Appreciate you very much. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.